to the Spirit in Mind broadcast with your hosts, Bishop C. Guy Robinson and Dr. Jonathan Shepherd, where we explore faith and mental health perspectives on current affairs. Let's get into today's discussion with the Spirit in Mind.
Well, hello, everyone. And again, welcome to Spirit in Mind, again, where we discuss current affairs with faith and mental health perspectives. What a blessing it is to have you with us today. And Dr. Shepherd, good day to you, sir.
Yes, good day, Bishop. And hopefully everyone out there is enjoying the day. Did you just hear our new intro? My Lord.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're moving forward and moving on with Spirit in Mind, and we're excited about new doors and new opportunities. And again, connection is everything. So we welcome our Spirit in Mind family. And again, there are different ways you can stay connected. Dr. Shepherd usually does the honors of going through that, so we can keep this blessing of connection going.
Absolutely. And just want to welcome Charlotte Green, Juanita Henderson, and Diane Sanders, and Sandra McCrae, and all those who will be joining us. And please let the persons know who can benefit from this show. Let them know we are on live. And we took a little break last week, but we're back. And this is how you can keep in contact with us. Even during that break, people were in contact with us. And so you can reach out to me. We'll do our individual ways of which you can contact us. That is jshep2471@gmail.com. That's my email address. And so many of y'all have been going to my website, drjonathanshepherd.com. And if you go there, there's a way in which you can reach out to me directly, and I'll get that. Go hit up my Instagram and Twitter and social media pages and let me know and that you're listening to Spirit in Mind. And then for Bishop Robinson, who is the pastor of the Tabernacle of the Lord. And you can check Bishop out on various platforms, in addition to not just through his church's website. You can go to his individual email and office number, and to also his social media pages. Check him out on there. He also has this mental health minute, which will bless you. I just heard the last one on forgiveness. Tremendous. And I think he did it in 50 seconds. And so I want you to know that you can go to these various platforms throughout the week. You don't have to wait until a Sunday night live to hear Spirit in Mind. And please let us know how you feel about what is being produced.
Absolutely. Connection is everything. And we're grateful again to stay connected. And of course, thank you. Yes, these mental health minutes, ministry minutes, we hope has been a blessing. Thank you all for supporting that and sharing it. Perhaps it can be helpful to someone. Just a little bit of a thought or a nugget that can hopefully get somebody to move to the next step of being happier and healthier and flourishing in this life. And so thank you for staying connected with us. And we took a break last time, and we're back and excited and trusted everyone is ready to talk. And we've been talking about goal setting, and we're still talking about that because, it's really appropriate any time of year to discuss goals, and people are ever dreaming, we hope, and looking to things and planning. And we wanted to talk a little bit about that. We're still technically in the first quarter of this new year. And so we just wanted to begin to talk about and continue talking about some things that can help us to deal with goal setting. And last week, we talked about what to do when things don't go our way. And Dr. Shepherd can certainly take a few moments to take us through some of the recap, and then we can go from there.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just been a tremendous blessing, asset, and insight for me as we have gone through. If you have not listened to that show from 2 weeks ago, Bishop really broke some things down as it relates to how to handle anger and frustration and disappointment. And we're going to continue to stay there because that's where so many of us find ourselves. It's not that we don't set up the vision board or have the vision parties and do the various things, and we have our list out and even have it in our phones and our ringtones. They're associated with our with our yearly goals. But what happens when you've done all those things and you don't get the expected results? And Bishop laid out a question where we will pick up today is, can you live with broken plans? Can you live with broken plans? And so that frustration, the anger that we will have, even with God, yes, I said with God, when we have done what he has asked for us to do, we participate in the goal setting, and it does not produce the expected results. Can you live with the broken plans? And, Bishop really talked about Luke chapter 24, verse 17. And we went back and forth and just gave some insight. And he talked a little bit about how do you handle when you're walking and yet sad, moving and yet sad, heartache, when disappointment. He brought the illustration of how the two disciples were on the road headed in the wrong direction because they were disappointed by the outcome of of expecting Jesus to be resurrected, and they had not seen him be resurrected, and they were just disappointed because they felt that, my Lord, had they spent all this time with him and he didn't come through for them? Man, I know you feel that out there. Isn't that something when you've been with God and you feel like, Lord, you still haven't come through for me? And yet they were walking and the Lord met them. And that was the encouragement, that the Lord will meet you where you are. He won't leave you alone. And it was just a powerful message about getting back on the right track. And so, we talked about how to be broken, but yet blessed. And again, we start off with this question today. Can you live with the broken plans? Because let me tell you, so many of us out there are struggling because we thought we were going to be way ahead. I was just listening to someone today as they were talking about their birthday, and there was various milestones that they had already planned to accomplish, which is a wonderful thing. We should have goals. We should have set plans, and the Lord is he's concerned about those plans. He even talks about it in Psalm 37. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And so, the Lord wants you to succeed, but we have to make sure that we understand that there's a certain timing that goes along with it. And we have to be honest with ourselves. There's certain emotions. And so many of us have chosen in this time, in this pandemic, to set aside the plans that the Lord told us even before 2020. You might say, well, that's not me, Dr. Shepherd. Well, that's cool. I'm glad that's not you. Well, let me just tell you where the pulse of the people are at. And I'm talking about from leaders all the way down. They don't even be church leaders. If you can just look at societal governmental leaders, how many of them have had to shift and change their plans. And so many of them are disappointed. They're angry. They're frustrated. So we want to deal with this. How can you live, or can you live with broken plans? That's where we're going to pick up today.
Absolutely. And for our consideration today, Dr. Shepherd, I was thinking after we wrapped up the other week, of course, we talked about broken plans and our challenges and frustrations, and the two disciples on the road to Emmaus, again, who were frustrated with really the Lord for things not going the way they had hoped. In fact, they say in that verse, we had hoped that he was going to redeem us. And so that's why we're sad, because what we had hoped, we thought that he was our redeemer. We thought that he was the Messiah. We thought God was going to operate in this way based off of those expectations. we formed this kind of hope, and based off of the experience. And we talked about that in previous episodes, where the distance or difference between experience and expectation is where we feel the pain, and it's commensurate with how far or estranged our actual experience is from our expectations. And so Jesus fills in that gap and meets them there. And what I was thinking about today, sometimes things don't go the way that we planned. And the solution is, of course, a theological tweak, because in that passage, Jesus sat down and opened or walked with him and opened up the scriptures and said, really, it's already in here, and he walked them through that and helped them to see that it's all still part of God's plan. That's when we have frustration with the Lord. And I was thinking, Dr. Shepherd, you can please fill in here, but I was thinking, and then other times, our frustration is interpersonal with other people.
Right.
Because usually something that we envision incorporates or requires or could be expedited by the help of others.
Wow.
Because we are social beings. And so, if my hope is to start a business, then somewhere in there is inferred a working relationship with clientele or with staff. And so what do we do when sometimes our expectations aren't met from other people? The first thing that sometimes it's noted that when Jesus acknowledged his call, and he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, he has anointed me to preach, in the Gospels. And then he began from public ministry, to build his team: Peter, Andrew, James, John, Bartholomew. So he built his team. And there's an interesting passage, we dealt with it today in worship in Matthew 10, where it lists the disciples. And it says, there was Simon, Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew the tax collector, James, Lebbaeus or Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and here's the one that's interesting, and Judas, who betrayed him. So usually, it's not uncommon, I should say, somewhere in our planning, there's some kind of interpersonal situation. I got this vision, but my staff or my coworkers or those, the person to whom I went in the bank to apply for a loan and got turned down. So what do you do when people don't have the same passion about the plans? Because usually our plans, last time we talked about God, our frustration with God, but we get frustrated with each other.
Yes.
I got this great plan, and the people upon whom we are contingent for it to really be as successful as we envision don't think that it was as great. I'm a pastor. What do you do? I think the preachers out there can identify. Sometimes you're working on a message, you got it in your head, and that was supposed to be, this is where they're going to go in, or this is going to be where they rejoice. Or you got a song and it blesses you, and then you're sure God gave it to you. You stand in front of the people like Noah with the ark, and nobody but maybe your family is saying, go ahead and sing, go ahead and build. We believe in your business. And so I did just want to deal with that interpersonal aspect, because the truth is, some people may not be as excited about your vision and your plans as you expected. And what do you do from there? So they were my thoughts today, Dr. Shepherd. Please feel free to interject here.
Yeah, and that's good, Bishop, and thank you, because that's where I am also. Going back and forth between the frustration, back and forth, if you will, the frustration with God and frustration with the interpersonal struggles, the frustration with the people. And so what I did, even as I was preparing today, I started listing out some of the sources of the frustration and anger. And Minister Cat, I'm going to kind of go out of order, but I want to go in line with where Bishop is at. And so one of the things that I talked about just in my own studies, this has just been a wonderful time, really this weekend of just sitting down, chilling, and just reflecting for myself and reading. And just want to say real quick, not to digress too much, but Bishop, I went and got the book that you talked about a few weeks ago on Thanks for the Feedback. Lord Jesus, if you haven't gotten that book yet, you need to go get that book. I also talked about the book Total Forgiveness. These have been the two books that I've already started. I finished Total Forgiveness and about halfway through, I think, for Thanks for the Feedback. It's a long book, but I want you to know that it's a really good book because it talks about how to be able to receive the feedback. How does this relate to what Bishop was just saying with interpersonal skills? Because one of the sources of frustration and anger comes from our inability to see our blind spots. And this is how this relates with the interpersonal struggles. Because as you are sharing your vision, as Bishop talked about, you have to be able to know as a leader that you have certain blind spots that others that you may not see. Think about it. When you're driving a car, there's a blind spot, right? And certain cars now are trying to minimize or reduce those blind spots. But could it be that as you're sharing your vision, as you are working with what God has told you to do, is it possible that you're unable to see where you were not able to communicate your goal or your plan as effectively as you thought that you were? It's very frustrating, I'm sure, as a leader, as a director, as a supervisor, when you are trying to go someplace, other people on your team are like, I'm not going there because I don't see it. And I'm sure Bishop would talk about, I mean, there's various reasons as to why that is. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight, and I really feel led to even talk more about it, is this: when you look at your blind spots, you want to make sure that you are looking at three areas, kind of subdivision from that. And really, it talks about when you are looking at how you are unable to see where you're falling short at. There are certain deficits where you thought that you communicated. I'm repeating myself here. You thought you communicated it correctly, but the person didn't receive it. And number one reason might be because of what they call emotional math. What does that mean? Emotional math, where if you set out to do something, you set out the plan, and then it didn't go over well, or you end up offending somebody, or you end up causing frustration, you say, "Oh well, let me back out." I had good. My intent was well. I planned on doing that the way in which I wanted it to occur, but it didn't turn out the way in which I thought it was going to happen. And then the other person's looking at you like, no, that's just you. That's just that's just your character. And so they're like, wait a minute. Which one really is you? You're thinking I'm just trying my best. And you kind of subtract what happened, and then the other person's actually multiplying it on top of you. And there's where that tension is at. It's called emotional math. You got to get the book to. I might not be doing my best in explaining it, but I tell you, that thing is really deep when you start to digest it and really look at that. The other thing they mentioned was situation versus character. A person might attach something onto you as a situation, whereas the other person's attaching it to your character. Again, how does this apply with frustration with other people? When you know that you're setting out for a goal and it still doesn't go out the way in which you thought it was going to, And people might say, well, that's just how they are. They're just a mean person, or that's just their inability. They're a scatterhead. And you're just like, well, no, I'm trying to juggle things, multitask, and maybe I just missed the mark somewhere. And so it really speaks to are you able to see those blind spots in where you are trying to go forward, trying to help to lead people, but you're not seeing that what is happening on the other side of how they're being impacted. So here's the third one. I just said it: the intent versus impact. And it's so funny how all three really overlay each other. I think this one is probably the most powerful one, is that you intended for this to happen a certain way, but yet the impact was the opposite of what you expected to happen. Bishop just said that you had the intent of the sermon heading a certain direction, that song having an impact, but that's not what happened. One of the things that really challenged me, I am done here, is that positive intent does not mean positive impact. Whew, that thing stuck with me, Bishop. Because when I think about some of the things that I know I wanted to do for God, I know I had the right intent, but it didn't have the impact that I expected it to have. And it was simply because I didn't recognize the blind spots on my personal life. We all have them. There's no one exempt from them. And so that's where I really had to ask God, Lord, thank you for giving me this book. And I know someone in here asked for me to say the name of the book again. I'll put it in the chat when Bishop is speaking. But the name of the book is Thanks for the Feedback and How to Be Able to Receive It Well by Douglas Stone and Helen Sheen. I just thought I would start there, Bishop. Tried my best to explain some of those things, but I'll tell you, seeing your blind spots, and I think can be a source, or not recognizing, let me say it like that, not recognizing your blind spots could definitely lead to a source of frustration, anger with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And having those expectations analyzed and even modified sometimes. Before, during this series, we've talked about Habakkuk, and we've talked about how Habakkuk in chapter 2 talked about, standing on the wall. I will stand my watch and set myself on the rampart and watch to see what he will say to me. I'm gonna look for it, and that's how our plans sometimes evolve. There's this moment of inspiration, and so then there's the turning inspiration into coded or codified information. In verse 2, and the Lord said to me, write the vision, write what you see. And so there's this matter of standing still. So now it's moved from inspiration to codified or documented information, and make it plain on tablets that he may run who reads it. And that's a significant part, because now writing it, that's turning it into observable information or documented information. So from inspiration to information. But now this part with those who read it may run with it is talking about impartation. And that's the people factor. And whenever we incorporate the people factor, which is important, but we get into not just communication, but interpretation and other schedules. And so it might not be on the same schedule that we envisioned because of other people's schedule. For the vision is for an appointed time. So now I have this passion, but it's not yet manifest, maybe in part because people are still reading, and because it said that he may run who reads it, but it actually happens in the reverse. So they're reading it and then they're running, and they can't run until they read, and there's reading and there's comprehension and there's interpretation. And so in our plans, we also have to factor in, especially when they're big plans, and the more people, then we get into that situation with group dynamics, um, and whenever you're dealing with, which is an important part of our planning, and that's why we talking about this today, because sometimes we're ready, but you kind of have to involve other people. And so there are parts to group, if you just kind of to go through it, some of you know this already, but in group dynamics is dealing with how people operate together, how they, as Habakkuk put it, internalize the vision and run, and plans turn into and incorporate. I'm not just talking about businesses, it can be in our homes. um, as a whole household, we plan to do whatever renovations, or we planned we were going to go on vacation. My household and my sister's household, my brother's household, and then we make the plans, but plans start evolving as people read it and run with it, and run with it at their pace and with their interpretations. And so we have to have some flexibility. It's very hard to be interpersonal and have black and white thinking, absolute my way or not. And so all of those things incorporate into the planning part. And so I was saying, if you understand group dynamics, there are certain stages of group dynamics that are important to our planning. Some of you already know group dynamic stages are forming, storming, norming, and performing. And some of you may already know that, but forming, storming, norming, performing, and perhaps even adjourning. Um, but they are the different stages of group dynamics, which means getting people involved who are essential to the working of our plans. And again, for those who are writing, that is forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And that's usually the stages in this pattern where we're dealing with making plans and communicating our plans so that those who read it can run with it. Um, in the forming stage, the forming stage, it's really when we're coming together. That's when I'm communicating my plan to those who are essential to the fulfillment of it. When I'm trying to build my team, like Jesus did, as we just read in the scriptures. When I'm forming, that's when we're coming together. Listen, this is what I plan. This is what we're going to do. It could be anything from a vacation with family members, vacation with friends, to starting a business, to anything. Like, this is the plan. This is what I'd like to do. This is my plan for this year. This is where I want to be. It still involves other people. And the forming stage is when we're communicating. And the next stage is the storming phase. And that's where we're talking about right now, when other people see it differently, when other people have different perspectives, and when other people may not be as excited about it as you are because it's your plan. And so they may not have the same passion. And the storming phase, though, is important, because it is important to get other perspectives. And each one of these stages have to be faced to get to the next one. The norming stage is when, okay, we learned how to flow. We got some functionality here. The plan is working, if you will. And then when performing is when we really got a rhythm. We're producing the product that we planned on producing. And then if necessary, adjourning is when the task is done and the group is no longer needs to be together. But if there's not an adjourning, Dr. Shepherd, I'm thinking today about how this cycle really repeats itself. So then you start forming again in a new season, and storming and norming and performing. And just when we think we got it and we had a rhythm, Life keeps unfolding, and we go back to the forming stage. And so these part things are so important to us understanding how plans can unfold. And you may be in the storming season right now. There's the encouragement. It doesn't mean that the plan is awry. It doesn't mean that it's not going to work. Sometimes those storming seasons are a part of the developmental process. We've gone this refining. In the list of disciples we read, he said, all of them and Judas who betrayed him, which is the powerful spiritual point that God uses even the storming phase to move us forward. That the storming does not catch God by surprise. That the apparent falling apart of our plan does not necessarily mean the end of our plan. It may be the pruning of our plan. But the pruning is to bring forth the fruit as it should. And so, and sometimes that requires regrouping. You understand anything about group dynamics? Sometimes you have to change the chemistry of the group. Sometimes you have to rework and retweak your team. That doesn't have to be a big belligerent thing. That just means you learn that this component needs to be tweaked. This person isn't available like I thought. All of that stuff is a part of it. And it's just important, I think, to go through those factors as well, because you need our plan. We need people. So last time we talked about when we're frustrated with God. This week we're talking about when we're frustrated with people, because a part of our plan, significant part, is interpersonal and interdependent even.
Absolutely, Bishop. That's good. And as we're sharing here today, you'll find yourself in one of these things. You know, you might say, well, Dr. Shepherd, you know, I didn't find myself necessarily with the things that you were talking about, not recognizing my blind spots, but maybe I find myself because of group dynamic stages. Or you might say vice versa. You know, we want to make sure that we're covering all areas because, you know, Bishop, even as I am working with different churches who are grieving the loss of leaders and grieving the loss of the ability to be able to worship together, function together, those are broken plans. You know, remember what the title of this topic is: can you live with the broken plans? And you know what may have caused those broken plans are definitely numerous factors. And when you're working with these group dynamics, it really, when you point them out to people, hopefully they'll start to see where they can find themselves so they can move forward. Thank you for saying that God can even utilize you even in the storming phase of the group dynamic stage. What I want to do, and hopefully, Minister Cat, you can show that one. I guess I'm just going to have to go in reverse order today. Not recognizing your blind spots. And then also number 2 is the bitterness that's inside or holding a grudge. Thank you, Minister Cat. So again, it falls right in line with what Bishop was saying. It is possible that when you are having interpersonal conflict, it's because there's something there that you're holding on to. There's bitterness there because of you didn't like how something had happened, maybe in the past or maybe even present day. You're holding a grudge. And that in itself can cause a person not to be able to walk in the fullness of what you are attending or expecting to happen in your life. One of the things I've also did, and you heard me mention, I will also put this book in the chat, is on forgiveness. And one of the things, as I've been learning and just eating this all up, man, I hope someone out there is just like me. My thirst for knowledge, and my thirst for the word of the Lord, not just for pure knowledge, but my thirst for spiritual knowledge has just been increased during this pandemic. And I thank God that even during the grief episodes that I have come through, there's nothing but the word of the Lord that has continued to sustain me. And one of the things that I've started at this beginning of the year was talk about total forgiveness and reading that book. And I learned that bitterness, holding a grudge, is the easiest way to grieve the Holy Spirit. And what Dr. Shepherd, what does it have to do with me mentally or psychologically or emotionally? It has a lot to do with you on that. When you find yourself in a place where you are unable to forgive, when you find yourself when you're holding that bitterness, there's no way that you're going to be able to achieve all that you are able to do because of that roadblock. It literally is a obstacle. Mentally, you may say, well, I put it aside. I'm just going to push it off. I'm just going to sweep it under the carpet. They hurt me, but oh well. Guess what happens when you don't deal with that? It grows. It festers. Well, I'm not feeding into it, Dr. Shepherd. Oh, I hear you out there. I forgave them a long time ago. But you never opened up about it. You were not truthful about it. Let me tell you, Bishop, one of the things that has really helped me during this season is how to be able to have difficult conversations with the people who I love, the people who I care about in my profession, so that I can be able to move forward to achieve the goals that I have set out. It's impossible. I can sit here and have all the plans that I want in 2022, but if I don't know how to be able to set aside some of the guilt that was placed on me unfairly, some of the things that I had nothing to do with, I had nothing to, some of the things that were placed on me, that was not my fault. I know, I hear you out there. So why are you telling me, Dr. Shepherd, to forgive? That I had nothing to do with that. Well, let me tell you about forgiveness. And we're not going to turn this into a session about forgiveness, but it is so tied into what we're talking about, is that when you don't forgive, that's when bitterness sets in. That's when you start holding that grudge. And I think about it, Bishop, as I'm about to finish here. How many times have I held on to something and should have let it go? And the Lord is just sitting there waiting on me to say, all right, whenever you're ready, I have so much bigger in store mentally. But let me talk about what happens when you free yourself of that bitterness. I thought I was done, but I need to say this. There is a freedom that you can't even describe. There's a lightness that you will feel. Yes, I know you are heartbroken that the plan didn't happen when you wanted it to happen. But let me tell you, you'll be okay with the delayed plan when you feel better and you know that you're free from the stuff that was holding you down and bogging you down. I have a feeling that even in some of the group dynamics that I work with, as we went through the various stages, that's wonderful that you will move through the stages. But let me tell you, you're unable to flow through each stage if you're holding bitterness, if you're holding something against the other person. Well, they didn't speak to me right, and they don't ever know what to do. And I don't know why God would give me certain people like that to be in this group. And, we just have all these different lists of complaints. And the Lord is just waiting on you to say, hey, look at me, show me. And Bishop, I just, just in my prayer time and just in my meditation time today, just looking at these different reasons why we find ourselves discouraged or dismayed when the goals don't turn out the way in which we want. Looking at not recognizing our blind spots and recognizing or not dealing with, I should say, the bitterness that so easily besets us.
Yeah, Dr. Shepherd, that's thank you for leading us in this direction, because that's actually that's the mental health minute that we posted for this week, is talking about the benefits of forgiveness, and thinking of it as an act of self-care. And as you said, again, we kind of for the sake of brevity, rushed through those stages of group dynamics and interpersonal relationships, and we bring all of that to our relationships and even to our planning, our attachments, our unhealthy attachments, our clingy and insecure and anxious attachments. We bring all of those. We project sometimes. That's why we have to look at ourselves. And you mentioned forgiveness, and there's actual data that shows that forgiveness is actually helpful in positive mental health outcomes, helping to lower depression and anxiety specifically. And sometimes what you raise is so important that we aren't even aware of how much energy that is zapping from our lives and effectiveness, because our avoidance strategies are so complex, and our rationalizations for not dealing with it and that kind of thing. Even the scriptures are clear that if a brother has offended you, seek him out and tell him so. That means it's really on the onus of the offended one to take some initiative. Why is that? Because just in talking, it's possible for the other person to not even know.
Yep.
Because they may have said something that triggered something or triggered our attachment issues or reminded us of something consciously or subconsciously of a pre-existing relationship, and we transferred it and projected, and we're carrying all of this stuff in us, and the other person may be going on about their lives not even aware. And so when we do this, and when we're citing this data about forgiveness, that's so important to planning and dealing with plans that don't go our way, because that is major. And then it helps us to understand other people. And so that forgiveness, and when we say it lowers depression, or helps to lower depression and helps to lower anxiety, we're talking about in the person who is offended.
Right.
Yeah. That's why I say all the time that forgiveness is an act of self-care. It is essentially me taking care of myself, because this stuff is living in me, as Dr. Shepard alluded to. It's living in me and it's influencing me. It's influencing my state of mind, my way of thinking, being, and doing, consciously and often subconsciously. So it's in there, and bringing that up, that catharsis, the ability to cleanse that out by acknowledging that, in healthy, productive ways, and to have someone, perhaps maybe someone needs to help us unpack that stuff, which is exactly why those kinds of therapeutic encounters are so important. But we stay here not because it was in our intention, because Dr. Shepard and I didn't talk about forgiveness today, but again, spirit in mind, we both conclude that this forgiveness piece is so important to being able to move forward when things don't go exactly as we planned. Not last week because of our theology, but this time because of our social engagements, and our interdependence. If you got a plan, at some point you're going to need people, and people are a part of it. And people who don't always see things immediately. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verse 39, it's an interesting. I'm always fascinated with this scripture, Dr. Shepard, as it involves other people. Jesus is on the cross, and he cried out and breathed his last after everybody finished mocking him. And the previous verses said, some people said, let's see if the prophet Elijah comes get him. He calling for him. Let's see if Elijah comes and gets him, and all of that kind of stuff. And he breathes his last breath. And then the centurion who stood opposite him says, truly, this man was the Son of God. Sometimes people don't see what you see. Sometimes they see it posthumously.
Whoa.
Oh my
Whoa.
goodness.
Look.
That's so important. And in your mind, you're like, I wish you had caught this vision 6 years ago.
Mm.
Wish you had caught that 3 years ago. Wish
Mm.
you had seen that before. I went through, because part of my hurt is that people don't see what the Father has given to me.
Wow.
And so and that's the spiritual part. You have to trust that God will do one of two things. God will either resurrect you and your vision, revive your plans, or number two, he will open the eyes of the people, which leads me, and then I'll stop, to another passage in Joshua 3 and 7. In Joshua 3 and 7, in the first two, the Lord has just finished telling Joshua, be strong. My hand is on you. Moses, my servant, is dead. You up. I got plans for you. I'm showing you what I'm going to do. You're going to cross over into this land of Canaan. I'm telling you, I'm with you. Be strong and courageous. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. And then in chapter 3, the Lord says to Joshua, today, this is the day when I will begin to magnify you or exalt you in the eyes of the people, so that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you.
Mm.
Here's my spiritual point, is that after you've worked all of these plans and after we've done all of the intellect, there's a part of and after you've made all your phone calls, and after we've even initiated conversations for forgiveness, leave room for the spiritual factor, because there is a part that is totally contingent upon the work of God opening the eyes of other people.
Wow.
Joshua is anointed, he's chosen, but the Lord says to him, here's the plan. You're going to cross over. You're going to possess the promise. Here's the plan. But in order for it to truly work, you're going to need people. And there is a part of dealing with the people that only I can do.
That's right.
And today, I will cause people to see what I see and have given you to do. That goes for whether you're starting a business. And so I just want to encourage somebody, because it doesn't mean that all is lost. It just may mean that right now, having done all to stand therefore. There's a spiritual element in a vision, in a plan, where God says, this is the part that I need to do. Leave room for that, and let me work and be still while I'm working. Because this part you can't read in a book. This part a self-help seminar can't do. This is the part. All of that has its place, but there's this other area not otherwise specified that you have to leave some room for, that can't totally be explained. But God says, I'm going to cause people to see. So God is either going to resurrect that, because like the centurion didn't see it until Jesus breathed his last breath. God's going to either resurrect. If God gave you that plan, it's going to work. Even if it seems, even when it looks dead, he'll have to resurrect it. Or we have to wait while he is working and doing surgery on the eyes of the people in the spirit.
Wow. Wow. Bishop, this is so good. And I'm laughing within myself, because I'm a planner. And so when I submitted my notes to Minister Cat, I had a certain order, and the Lord had just reversed the order from 3, 2, 1, because it actually just falls right in line. So I know I'm laughing to myself. I'm also laughing to myself because as I was listening to this, sometimes as we are preparing and we're teaching, I want you all to know that many times this is speaking from my own personal experiences. This is really the Lord is impressing upon. I have to speak for myself, as to how to be able to handle those frustrations. Because let me tell you, I get frustrated. You know, I become angry. I just told you I'm a planner, and when they don't work, and when plans may not work the way in which I expect them to, it does frustrate me. But I'm thanking God because in this new season, and as the Lord has continued to root out the various things that will cause me to be frustrated or anger, helping me to see my blind spots, helping me to understand group dynamic stages, helping me to remove the bitterness and not hold grudges, and making sure that I make room for the spiritual factor. I just want to leave this last one with you, and that point is postpone disobedience. Now, how does that factor into what we just talked about? Postpone disobedience, because as Bishop just outlined with Joshua, Joshua could have said, Lord, I don't see all this that you're telling me to do, even back when he was anointed back in chapter 1. Some of us, we know the plans that God has set for us. And because they have not factored in, or that they have not worked according to the time that we factored into all that we would do, we just basically said, I'm not going to do it. We even ask God, Lord, we sing the song, shine the light on us, oh God, search my heart, try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting, as it says in Psalms. And the Lord shows it to you, and you're like, oh, well, I thought, well, God, I ain't ready to deal with that just yet. And that's so true. There's certain goals that even, and again, that's what I said, I'm being transparent here. There's certain goals that I know that I have, that the Lord has told me. And I've been instructed that, okay, Shepherd, if you want to reach that goal, you're going to have to go back and do something that you may not want to do. Ooh, I know I'm speaking to here. And when that is told to you, you can do one or two things. You can say, I don't think I'm ready for that. Lord, you still going to make it happen. I'm just ain't ready to take that step yet. That is postponed disobedience. Now, I know some of y'all just outright, that's just disobedience, but I just call it, the book that I've been reading is called it Postponed Disobedience, which is just really just disobedience, and causes you to miss out on what God has for you fully. That's what I've been saying all along. These are the things that I've been noticing within myself. If you don't want to, say it's you, I'll just say for myself, Lord, I don't want to sweep anything under the carpet. I don't want to let something stand in my way because of me being prideful, or me thinking that I don't have a problem, or me, having to go back and to rectify a situation. Some of us today, we are our own worst enemies as to why our goals have not come forth. And so, as we're winding down this show, when Bishop said about the spiritual factor, if you're asking for forgiveness, that really does require the Lord to come in to help change your heart. It really does require a mindset change. You have to wake up every morning choosing that these are the goals that I'm going to set forth in doing. And if forgiveness is part of it, you just say, Lord, I need to forgive daily. If it's working out, if it's your goal to set out to not eat certain foods, you have to wake up each morning and say, I am not going to go to the grocery store. I'm not going to go by Chick-fil-A. I'm not going to go by whatever the restaurant is that is serving that food. And you have to make a conscious decision. Lord, I want you to bless me in my finances. So you have to make a conscious decision. I'm going to set aside my tithes. I'm going to set aside the offering once I get my paycheck. If there's to do direct deposit, whatever it might be. But set up those things. I just did it for myself, Bishop, regarding self-care. I have never done this before, and I said I was going to do it for 2022. I set up my my time for self-care over the last 3 months. I've never done, Shepherd has never done that. I've never done that. But I did it today. I made certain phone calls, set appointments. This is what I'm going to do. And if we don't take that time, if we do not allow ourselves that when things have been shown to us, I know where I'm at, to reveal what's been hindering us, it will cause us to be disobedient. It will cause us to not follow through on what we want God to do within us. Mentally, there's some blockage. There's some things that so many of us really have some good intentions for, but there's a block. And some of it just has to do with saying, it's time to work on my weaknesses. It's time to work on my. I was just talking about that with someone today, Bishop. Really, I was, and they were just sharing with me how it's scary to work on your deficits. It's scary to work on those areas where you know you need God's help to strengthen and to come up to par with where your strengths are. Some of our goals are not accomplished because we don't want to focus in on those weak areas. Those weak areas can be synonymous with our blind spots. Absolutely. And yeah, you may say, yeah, I know I'm weak in this area, but I ain't going to do nothing about it. Hold on one second. That's not helpful. We want to make sure that in this programming, in all that we're saying and doing, we know that we serve a God who is concerned about every weak area in your life. And let me tell you, when you make room for that spiritual factor, as I give it over to Bishop, I know he's going to take a little bit further. I tell you, there is so much more that is in store for you. So I hope that this has encouraged you all, has encouraged me. Just remember those, just some of these factors that you could be experiencing that could be hindering you from being able to live through these broken plans.
Absolutely. And so, as Dr. Shepard, this has been a blessing to me as well. And so, in summation, we're dealing with how to, of course, we're talking about planning for this series. And for the last couple of installments, we've been talking about dealing with plans that go awry. As John Steinbeck, the American author, said, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. So how to deal with those things. We've been, and so last week we talked about the theology of it and asking, first of all, is this plan in the will of God for my life? Is this what God showed me, or is this what was imprinted upon me by cultural images and expectations? So is this plan the will of God? And then what to dealing with our frustrations and disappointments with what we feel God has ordained or allowed, that like the men on the road to Emmaus. And today we're talking about the social factor that is involved in dealing with other people and dealing with our own issues and dealing with the feedback, the negative and positive feedback, the constructive and not so constructive feedback, the stuff that builds us up and the stuff that offends us, and how to work on that. And Dr. Shepard just said it, that takes strength and it takes courage. So which is really what God said to Joshua in Joshua 2. He just kept saying 1 and 2, only be strong and courageous.
Wow.
I will magnify, I'll deal with the people at this point. But right now, all I want you to focus on is being strong and courageous. That strength and courage sometimes looks like the courage to look within, the courage to work on our issues and insecurities, the courage to have difficult conversations with the mindset of forgiveness. Close that. Forgiveness does not necessarily mean the reinstatement of the relationship to its previous status. That it not necessarily. That's so very important. Think about that on a very relational level. Sometimes even in romantic relationships, it doesn't mean that necessarily those couples get back together, but if they have a child, that they need to come to some point of reconciliation to be able to be the healthiest parents that they can be. It doesn't always mean reinstatement of the exact same relationship. doesn't mean that you go back and reinstate exactly what you did. When Joseph forgives his brothers in the scriptures, he can never go back to the Joseph before he fell into the pit, because so much has happened since then.
Wow.
And he's evolved and he's a different person. But that forgiveness moment still needs to happen, because at that moment, he's an official, he's a leader, he's in a major position, but there's still something in him that needs to break and come forth so that he can be an even better leader in what he's doing. And so that's the wisdom of the scriptures. Jesus said, except you come to me as a little child, because I know you got letters behind your name, and I know you got all these accomplishments, and that has its place. But I want to talk to the 6-year-old you. I want to deal with the unresolved stuff. I want to talk to that so that can come up, because that's going to help you to be better in where you are today. And so that takes strength and that takes courage. That's what the Lord said to Joshua. Only be strong and courageous, and I will begin to magnify you in the eyes of the people. And so these relational issues is what we focused on today. Last week we talked about the theological issues. They were talking about the, if you will, sociological issues that can affect our plans. But either way, know that there's help and hope. Dr. Shepard, that's all I got. And I know we're out of time, so I don't know if you have any wrapping words.
Yes, sir. We just want to let people know that you can still reach out to us. In our outro, we have a new outro that will be played. You can always reach out to us. Please let us know how we can help you, how we can be able to minister to you, and just give us our own feedback. Let us know where we can improve, where we can help strengthen, because this is for you. And we praise God for all the different people. So many comments have been coming in today. Bishop has been really, really good. And just thank you for all those who are letting us know that Spirit in Mind is helping you. So please continue to reach out to us, and we'll be glad to assist and to help you. That's all, Bishop, that I have for today.
The Lord be our help. We look forward to seeing you next time on Spirit in Mind.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Spirit in Mind, and we're also on Instagram at Spirit in Mind Live. Join us next time for a new episode of Spirit in Mind.